Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining us at the United National Congress press conference this Sunday, January 26th, 2026, 25th, 2026. We had some technical difficulties, which are sorted now, so thank you once again for bearing with us. Today, as I said, we have two of our ministers, Minister MP Davendranath Tancoo, the Minister of Finance, and MP Minister Khadijah Ameen, the Minister for Rural Development and Local Government. So I will invite back to the podium Minister Davendranath Tancoo to share some very important news. Thank you. Minister?
Thank you again, Cook, and hello again. I think we must begin with a bit of information as a reminder about what we found when we assumed office short 6 months ago. Let me remind you that we found an economy in crisis, massive fiscal deficits with nothing put in place to finance it, billions owed by the state to providers of goods and services, including debts to building contractors, suppliers of essentials like medicine, medical supplies, fees to international agencies to which we subscribe, including international financial institutions, billions more owed to businesses and individuals via VAT and income tax. We found an economy and a country buried by a tsunami of crime caused by the refusal of the former administration to confront crime. We found a declining revenue base as a direct result of the failure to initiate any new revenue streams or to secure existing revenue sources. We found a sabotage of the Inland Revenue Division to the point where the entity responsible for tax collection was operating in many departments with less than a quarter of the required staffing. The Inland Revenue Division was working with outdated IT infrastructure. They were using Gentax 9 when the rest of the world was up to version 26 of the Gentax 4. All of this contributed to a net loss of your dollars in revenues every year. That is billions of dollars of yours, rightfully yours, which never entered our revenue streams, but was lost to tax evasion, inefficiency, and tax fraud by unpatriotic, corrupt businesses and individuals. In 2020, the then PNM AG Faris Al-Rawi told the country that the tax gap, that is the money lost from taxation, the money not collected because of the failures of the former administration, then PNM AG Faris Al-Rawi told the country that the tax gap was between 15 and 12 billion TT dollars. Later, Coleman Booth, then Minister of Finance, would swear on an affidavit that the tax gap was closer to $10 billion. In either case, it's an astronomical figure, ladies and gentlemen. In the destructive decade of the PNM, that would mean that over $100 billion was lost, thrown away by the PNM. Who benefited from this tax evasion, ladies and gentlemen? Into the PNM pockets. Into which PNM pockets did this $100 billion go? And it is PNM pockets, because that is the only reason that could explain why the PNM Minister of Finance and the PNM Attorney General sat on their hands while crooks stole billions from this country. I want you to remember that tax gap, ladies and gentlemen, because based on the numbers that I have seen, if that tax gap had been closed, if the country had been able to collect that $10 billion every year between 2015 and 2025, this country would not have experienced the kind of fiscal deficits for the past decade that we have experienced under the PNM. That is $100 billion that could have been spent to improve your lives, fix roads, provide the police service with resources, including vehicles, medicine in hospitals, laptops in schools, repair bridges, support small and medium-sized businesses, create thousands of new well-paying jobs, all of the things that this UNC administration are trying to do now. At the very least, the PNM would not have had to borrow $100 billion. So when I tell you that the PNM has sabotaged this country, when I tell you that the PNM has destroyed or attempted to destroy this country, understand that I'm speaking on the basis of facts. These are facts that are in the public domain for any decent investigative journalist to find if they are inclined. I think the population already knew that. You may not have had the numbers and these specific facts, but you knew that the PNM had sabotaged the economy. So don't get distracted by their antics now. Don't be misled by the PNM and the PNM trolls on social media online and their demands for immediate solutions to problems that they themselves entrenched over the last decade. We have been in office for 9 months. Under the leadership of Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, we have taken the bull by the horns and immediately began putting in place measures to treat with the problems that the PNM left us with. From increasing staffing at the Board of Inland Revenue, to the Customs Division's improvement, to go after tax evaders and make sure that this country, that is you citizens, get the revenue that you are supposed to get. We confronted the ghost gangs in URP and CPEP, where millions were being used to finance gangsters and the criminals who were then facilitated by a complicit PNM administration to slaughter citizens in the worst crime wave this country has ever seen. The PNM treated the Treasury as if it were their private bank account, spending $5 billion per year on contracts in violation of the procurement legislation, most of them without checks and balances, without accountability, and with no way of knowing at all if the projects were actually done, while millions were being spent. And they didn't just use your money. They borrowed to finance their wild spending. I've always said, ladies and gentlemen, that there's nothing wrong inherently with borrowing. What is wrong is not putting in place anything to repay the borrowing. What is worse is not having any accountability for the use of the funds. And they borrowed, ladies and gentlemen. I'm advised that in the period 2015 to 2025, the PNM engaged in borrowing of 223 new loans with a total value of 119 billion TT dollars. Remember that 100 billion tax gap that the PNM financiers facilitated and the PNM friends and families benefited from? If that money had been collected by the functioning BIR and Customs and Excise, ladies and gentlemen, it means in total the PNM would not have had to borrow 80% of what they borrowed. They would have had to borrow 80% less over the period of their 10 years in office, 80% less than $119 billion, ladies and gentlemen. When you consider as well that they spent over $620 billion during the decade of decadence, it means that just about 1 in every $5 spent by the People's National Movement while they were in government was borrowed. The question is twofold. What did they do with the money? And what did they put in place to repay it? I've already indicated that they put nothing in place to repay it, ladies and gentlemen. But let's focus on what they did with the money. Let me give you one example. According to a media release by the Ministry of Finance dated July 29, 2026, the Minister of Finance, then Colm Imbert, announced the government of Trinidad and Tobago had launched a 10-year US $1 billion international bond. He boasted about its success and committed, and I quote, proceeds of the bond are to be utilized to finance the country's development program over the rest of this fiscal year, as well as over the 2017 fiscal year. I want to repeat for emphasis because we'll come back to this. Proceeds of the bond are to be utilized to finance the country's development program over the rest of this fiscal year, as well as over the 2017 fiscal year. So the then Minister of Finance carried his team all over the USA and England, Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and London, telling potential investors that he was seeking to borrow $1 billion US, that is about 6.5 billion TT dollars, to finance the country's development program in the remaining 3 months of 2016 and the 12 months of 2017. Now, the development program is important. It is broken up into economic infrastructure, social infrastructure, multi-sector, and other services. It deals with the construction and maintenance of buildings, including hospitals, schools, and police stations. It deals with road repairs, drains, bridges, dredging works to prevent flooding, coastal protection, and policy development. So if the government under Imbuth saw the need to borrow to provide attention to the country's infrastructure, we can have no issue with that. And initially we didn't. But let's look at the figures, ladies and gentlemen. For 2016, Imbuth budgeted $7 billion for development program expenditure, but actually only spent $4.4 billion, abandoning projects worth $2.6 billion in fiscal 2026 alone. In fiscal 2016, we're referring to. In fiscal 2017, the story was the same. Imbuth budgeted $5.1 billion, but only spent $3.4 billion, abandoning $1.7 billion in work budgeted for, but not spent. And this was the pattern of the PNM. Not only the corruption that stole billions from this country, but where it mattered most, even when they borrowed money to finance it, somehow the PNM managed to use up millions and billions of dollars with nothing to show for it. Overall, in terms of the development program, the PNM identified projects that were critical over the decade of delinquency, spent millions costing and determining specifications for the projects, managed to get parliamentary approval for them, and then proceeded to abandon 1 in every 3 of these projects. As someone from a southern constituency, it was not difficult to see which projects they abandoned. It was not difficult to see the geographic discrimination practiced by the PNM. But what happened to this $1 billion US debt? What was put in place to pay the debt plus interest? What new revenue streams, especially foreign exchange inflows, were generated that could have been used to pay back this 2016 debt? How were they going to pay this $1 billion US debt back? How were they planning to pay it, ladies and gentlemen? What new projects? What new foreign direct investment streams? What new initiatives were introduced since 2016, which could have paid off even a small part of this $1 billion debt that Imbuth borrowed back in 2016? Not one single thing was done. No effort, ladies and gentlemen, was made to provide a facility which could pay the debts back, ladies and gentlemen. And while he boasted about his success in raising the bond and in convincing the investors that he had a plan for the country's development and revenue generation, especially US currency to repay the debt, the truth is that Imbuth had no plan. The PNM never had a plan. Their focus was to borrow, 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 spend, 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 and push the can down the road for somebody else to pay the piper. The debt remained on our books, ladies and gentlemen, as a bullet payment, with Imbuth's mismanagement and his PNM policies contributing to pushing the country down the slippery slope, contracting the economy when it should have been growing our economy to allow for bond repayment. These policies, ladies and gentlemen, of the PNM presided over the downgrade of our country's rating from Standard & Poor's from A to A-, then to BBB+, then to BBB, and then to BBB-, not to mention continuous changes in our outlook. The same trend exists with the Moody's rating. Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, since coming into office 9 months ago, the Kamla Persad-Bissessar administration has confronted our economic and fiscal challenges frontally. We have engaged in tax administration reform, including a significant upgrade of the country's tax collection authority, including hiring over 300 plus new officers and upskilling existing staff, as well as introducing enhanced information technology support to improve revenue collection and strengthen corporate governance and accountability throughout the Inland Revenue Division. As I indicated, ladies and gentlemen, under the PNM, the Inland Revenue Division was using GenTax, which is the software used to collect that information with regards to revenue. They were using a version 8, while the rest of the world had progressed already to version 23. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a sin. The UNC government, the administration of Kamala Persad immediately has been putting measures in place to upgrade our GenTax and our revenue collection system, ladies and gentlemen. But that's not all. We have initiated the modernization of the Customs and Excise Division again by adding technological, technical, and human resource support to improve collection efficiency. Together, these will address that $10 billion tax gap that Imbert allowed to flourish under his watch. But more than that, we have also engaged in expenditure rationalization, removing duplication in public expenditure, increasing efficiency, enhancing project management responsibilities, and ensuring value for money. By increasing the contribution rates and the retirement age, we are ensuring the sustainability of the national insurance system, guaranteeing that you will be able to continue to get your pension and health benefits in the future. But we didn't just stop there. In Budget 2026, we introduced several new revenue-raising measures, including a landlord business surcharge and an asset levy on banks and insurance companies, both of which seek to expand the tax base to build economic fairness through fiscal accountability. And we are currently working as well on a new NIF bond, the NIF3, and a REIT, a real estate investment trust, both of which will also contribute to the development of the local, that is the domestic stock exchange, and our domestic investor base. In November last year, we announced a revitalization blueprint, a 10-year plan to develop 11 new infrastructural projects throughout the country, designed to create 50,000 new sustainable jobs, advance growth generating industries to enable long-term sustainability and stability, modernizing infrastructure, fostering technology-driven industries, and develop new and attract new foreign direct investment. That is foreign exchange generation, ladies and gentlemen. Already we have received expressions of interest, including from China and the Gulf states, amongst others, including, ladies and gentlemen, domestic investors. Notably, yesterday our government hosted Her Excellency Noura Al-Kabi, Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates. Additionally, ladies and gentlemen, there have been substantial developments in the oil and gas sectors, with increased partnerships between Trinidad and Tobago and major international energy companies. Based on the positive momentum developed over the last 9 months under the hand and direction of the Honorable Prime Minister, there have already been several key initiatives which are at final investment stage in the energy sector, as well as several other production initiatives already in progress. Based on the existing energy projects with EOG, Exxon, BP, Shell, Parenco, and others, we expect that this country will benefit from a significant boost in natural gas productions, upwards of 2 billion scuffs per day in the near future. It is against this backdrop of positive growth momentum that I approached the Prime Minister at the start of the year to go to market. The Honorable Prime Minister immediately agreed that the government should take the proactive decision to go to the international financial market in January 2026 to refinance the $1 billion US bond taken out by the former Minister of Finance, for which he has not yet accounted for. On January 16, 2026, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago announced a 3-day roadshow. On January 16, 2026, the Republic announced a 3-day roadshow comprising in-person and virtual meetings with key international investors. Our team met with over 50 fixed income investors via one-on-one and group sessions to provide an update of our credit and rationale for the transactions, as well as to provide factual insights, some of which I just presented to you, into the developmental projects and the programs of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, which will propel our economy and our country to sustainable growth. At the open of the business in New York on January 22nd, 2026, with a favorable market backdrop and supported by strong indications of interest from the roadshow led by myself as Minister of Finance and including the Governor of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Larry Hawaii, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Suzette Lee Chi, Assistant Manager of the Debt Management Unit, Manager of the Debt Management Unit, Zara Mohammed, and Assistant Manager of the Debt Management Unit, Stephanie Tulsi, and a technical advisor. Together with these individuals, ladies and gentlemen, on January 22nd, we announced the successful completion of its $1.0 billion sovereign bond issuance on the U.S. market. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to repeat that. On 22nd of January 2026, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago announced the successful completion of its $1.0 billion sovereign bond issue in the U.S. market. The joint book runners recommended that the Republic announce the benchmark transactions, and the order book climbed quickly throughout the morning with large offers from real money accounts, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to advise that the bond was immediately oversubscribed by approximately 2.5 times, underscoring strong and diversified investor demand for the investment in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and importantly, confidence in the plans, policies, and initiatives of the current Kamala Persad-Bissessar administration. This transaction was issued and managed by joint book runners, JP Morgan, and the Bank of America. The successful issuance represents a clear validation of the sovereign, that is Trinidad and Tobago's credit fundamentals and a new disciplined policy framework. Achieving pricing approximately tighter than benchmarks while attracting an order book 2.5 times the final issue size in the U.S. market reflects sustained investor confidence in the credit and improved risk perception of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Leveraging over 140 unique orders from top accounts, ladies and gentlemen, Trinidad and Tobago took the book subject at 12 p.m. and shortly thereafter announced guidance. On the back of a solid order book that remains stable even after the guidance announcement, the Republic launched the 1.0 bond with a 20 basis points compression from initial price thoughts. The new $1 billion 10-year senior unsecured bond successfully closed at 6.5% and at 98.552% price. The notes will be listed on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange and will be governed by the laws of New York. Key transaction highlights include US $1 billion notes due 2036. We achieved the largest bond transaction in the past 10 years for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We achieved the largest order books in the last 5 years of $2.4 billion despite two negative rating outlooks. We increased participation in the number of total investors, 144 unique investors in 2026 versus 93 unique investors in 2024 under Coleman Booth. We repositioned Trinidad and Tobago's credit with a large, diverse, and high-quality investor base. We compressed the pricings by 20 basis points from IPTS to launch. We materially extended external debt maturity profile average life of the Republic from 4.1-year average life to 6.3-year average life. We fully addressed, ladies and gentlemen, the August 2026 external bond maturity of US $1 billion. The transaction was priced at levels approximately 54.6 basis points tighter than the sovereign's original issuance of this $1 billion transaction issued in 2016. The transaction also achieved compression in spreads for IPT and priced inside benchmarks and prevailing emerging market levels. This transaction meaningfully enhances our country's funding profile and supports continued engagement with global investors on increasingly favorable terms. It should be noted that compared to recent sovereign USD issues by Caribbean and near-region peers with close to or better global agency ratings, we have priced at better values. They have priced at higher coupons reflecting lower credit ratings and a higher perceived risk. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that Trinidad and Tobago have priced at a better position, reflecting superior credit ratings, credit risks, despite negative ratings and the negative outlooks of the two rating agencies. For example, ladies and gentlemen, we have priced better than some of our comparative or near-region peers. Bahamas, for example, with a Fitch rating of BB minus, went to market with a 10-year US dollar bond, $1.067 billion worth in June last year, close to the 1 billion TT dollars that we would have approached. And their coupon rate was 8.25%. I want to repeat, our coupon rate was 6.5%. Barbados, which has a Fitch rating of B+, went to market for a 10-year US dollar $500 million bond last year and attracted a coupon rate of 8%. I want to repeat, Trinidad and Tobago's coupon rate is 6.5%. And the Dominican Republic, their 12-year $2 billion bond generated a 6.95% coupon. Again, I want to repeat that our coupon rate was 6.5%. Given these truths, it is clear that international investors continue to place Trinidad and Tobago in a higher quality bucket even amid elevated global rates and recent outlook revisions. Importantly, these results highlight that investors have fullest confidence in the country's ability to meet its fiduciary duties. Just as important, however, is that our request for financing was backed by solid ongoing plans and initiatives designed to stimulate economic growth as well as domestic and foreign direct investment. I want to take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to thank Governor Hawaii and the team of the Ministry of Finance for their support and exceptionally strong involvement in this extremely successful roadshow and bond issue. I also want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar for her daily guidance on this initiative. It was the Honorable Prime Minister who insisted that the refinancing of this bond be pursued early and in the best of market conditions. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your support and faith in the process, for bravely taking these risks for the betterment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. For anyone who has done this exercise before, you would know that it involves a substantial amount of preparation, research, and engagement to ensure success. And we have succeeded. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Minister Tancoo, for that very comprehensive and inspiring report. It's so good to know that you've proven the naysayers wrong. The international community is very, very, very confident in the future of Trinidad and Tobago and given us $1 billion in financing. That's incredible news. Next, with also very important news and report will be Minister Khadijah Ameen, the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. So I would invite her to the podium right now. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, members of the public. This morning, our press briefing, we find it necessary because over the last week, we have observed a deliberate attempt by the PNM to mislead the public about local government affairs, about carnival cleanup, and about local government funding. We have heard cries of a crisis, selective outrage, and a whole political theater from the PNM, including their political leader, PNM mayors, and chairmen and councillors. But this morning, I am here to put facts, dates, and figures on the record. Because the public dating on alcohol, when they are not delivering on real services. And that is the mandate we have given to all corporations. As Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, I have met with all our corporations on a continuous basis, and I have reiterated to them the need to return to their core services. In the 2026 budget, the PNM is claiming that they got less than the UNC corporations. That is a blatant lie. In the 2026 budget, the PNM corporations combined got $987.29 million. And that is 181 million more than the 805.46 million that the UNC corporations received combined. So the figures are there in the Ministry of Finance records that the PNM corporations combined still get more than the UNC corporations. So it is an absolute lie. The claim of the leader of opposition as well as some of those PNM local government representatives who are scraping because they know that a local government election is at hand. And this clearly is their campaign. But I say to you categorically, we will not play politics with rubbish. The regional corporations have a duty, a legal duty, to sanitize their region. And we will be working with all corporations to ensure that the burgesses, the citizens, do not suffer. Carnival cleanup is no surprise. Carnival happens every single year. Juve happens every year. The parade of the bands in Port of Spain, San Fernando, Arima, as well as the regional carnivals in every region in Trinidad happens every year. So carnival cleanup follows naturally. It is not an emergency. It is not a last-minute discovery. Every regional corporation knows exactly what follows in the time of carnival. Not only on Monday and Tuesday, but in the lead-up as well as thereafter. So any corporation and any mayor or chairman claiming in January that they are not prepared for cleanup after carnival is admitting to poor planning and weak management on their part. This is not a funding issue. This is a leadership issue at the regional corporations. And I want to reiterate that I have met with every regional corporation from the first week of January for us to treat with Carnival 2026 and the cleanup at the regional carnival celebrations. We have been coordinating with the NCC, the National Carnival Commission, and the Ministry of Culture. We chose early coordination so that nobody could claim they are scrambling at the last minute. Our planning has been very structured and focused on delivery. And the goal is to protect all our citizens, and corporations must not manufacture excuses to avoid doing their work. Stop the laziness, do your work. The PNM, of course, are aware of our planning because every municipal corporations were part of those planning meetings. Some of those meetings were in groups and some of them were separate, where we met with them, their public health officers, their work supervisors, and we heard from them what their needs are. We shared with them what the NCC celebrations were carded in their region, and they put forward their carnival cleanup schedule, which every year for decades the corporations have been producing. And we work with them to enhance those schedules of work. That includes provision in some cases of additional compactors and flat tray trucks, water trucks to wash the street, and very critical labor to clean the streets and to clean other sites that are important to Carnival. Meetings were held with the Port of Spain City Corporation to discuss sanitation and Carnival activities on a whole, with us at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, as well as with the Minister of Culture and the NCC. Our nation's Carnival activities are not only surrounding the national Carnival celebrations, as I say in Port of Spain and San Fernando and so on, but we have regional carnivals. And these venues, of course, will be a focus to prepare beforehand, as well as clean up during the Carnival Monday and Tuesday and Ash Wednesday. But we also have many areas in the regions where we have beaches, rivers, recreation spaces that religious groups, youth groups, and families go to camp. That is a huge Carnival activities, as well as on Ash Wednesday, where there's a lot of traffic and visitors to the beaches. So we have been working with the Sawa Lavantil Regional Corporation. While they don't have many Carnival activities within their region, the Maracas Bay, Tairico, Las Cuevas, and La Fillette beaches will be their focus, while they only have one celebration in the Aranguez area. So we have met with them and we have put things in place. In the Tunapuna Piarco region, for example, while you do have major celebrations in areas such as Aruca, Tunapuna, St. Helena, Maracas, and Maracas Valley and other areas, they also have the beaches in Blanchisseuse and some of those rivers like the Marian River, where you have a lot of visitors. So we have given them extra resources to treat with those. In the Sangre Grande region, they also have major carnival in the town center, but they have a lot of activities. If you think about Tancoo, Matlotte, Salibia, the Valencia River, and other areas where people converge, people go to camp, and they camp for days at a time, in some cases for the entire carnival weekend. So we have identified those areas, and they too are getting additional resources, as well as Rio Claro Corporation, where you have the beaches that entire stretch from Mayaro to Rio Claro, Ottawa, and so on, as well as Guayari. We also have the Moruga beach facilities, and Point Fortin have identified the Clifton Hill beach area. So we have done detailed planning with these corporations. We have given them additional resources. Recently, we had a pilot project for our national program for the upkeep of public spaces, and that has given the corporations a new lease because they have had workers, they are running the pilot, and that similar system will be activated for the carnival cleanup. Workers will be employed directly at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government and assigned to regional corporations during the carnival period. We have, despite all the claims from the other side, we had a feedback session with our stakeholders, and in fact CNC3 published an article quoting the Mayor of Port of Spain and other corporations who commended the program, the national program for the upkeep of public spaces, and in fact every municipal corporation asked for the program to be expanded. So for Carnival, we will be working with NCC and SwimCall and other stakeholders. So I tell you, there is no crisis. One of the other things that we had, that I want to point out is in terms of details for this program. Labor will be deployed for the Carnival season from the 2nd of February. The 1st of February is a Sunday. So they will begin on the 2nd of February, Monday, and work through till February 28th. We have over 1,000 workers who will be deployed to various regional corporations. And we have teams of 12 persons, one supervisor and 12 laborers. What we have done is moved away from paying people $80-something a day to paying them a decent wage. Our supervisors will get $269 plus $9 COLA. So they are getting $278 a day. Our laborers will get $233 plus $9 COLA. That is $242 a day. This is following discussions with several unions who made these recommendations. But you know what? While the worker gets a more decent wage, the overall cost is less. The daily cost for one team of workers is just under $2,500 per day. What we had previously was where you had the middleman, the contractors. So now that workers are being hired by the ministry, we cut out the contractors, we cut out the middlemen, we cut out the political figures and the gang leaders. We have productivity which will be more measurable, more transparent, and more accountability. We are saving money which allows us to employ more people and employ people directly. And this is a clean break from the models that the PNM had, where you had all these political people getting contracts. And some of the PNM people who are in uproar are upset because they, over years, have been getting contracts to clean certain areas. And we are moving away from that now by employing people directly and putting more money in people's pockets. So I say to you, when you hear them complaining, I'll tell you what they're complaining about. One of the very glaring contradictions that I see in this argument from the PNM corporations, we hear complaints that they don't have funding for sanitation, for cleanup, but they have money to throw fete. They have money for big celebrations and to buy alcohol and to wine low. They can find money for stage and sound system and fireworks and alcohol and to fund celebrations, but all of a sudden, as soon as there's UNC in government, they can't find money to clean up for carnival. They can't find money to remove garbage from the streets. This is not a funding crisis. This is a pure political lie. This is a crisis of priorities where the PNM has their priorities wrong. Garbage collection is not optional. It is mandatory. It is in the act and it is a duty of the corporation. Sanitation is not a luxury. Don't play politics with garbage. And I want to warn the leader of opposition. She's a very experienced politician, and I think she should know better than to keep PNM caucus in corporations held by the PNM. The chamber of the council is not the PNM's Balize House. Keep your caucus at Balize House. By all means, you're free to keep your caucus and make your public statements, but do not do so in the facilities that belong to the taxpayers, such as the corporation's council chamber, and then boldly post it on your social media. My friends, our cleanup for Carnival will go on. Citizens must ask one simple question of these corporations. If you could fund a FET, you could fund garbage collection. Contractors are owed. In fact, we are meeting contractors in PNM corporations where they have received their full allocations even in previous fiscal, and they have not paid their garbage collectors. And we will ask you why. It is your responsibility because you did get the allocation. You did get the releases. And this is from the previous fiscal. So the UNC wasn't in government. There's no blame UNC. The PNM was in government at central government and at local government. And contractors are owed millions of dollars in some of these PNM corporations. So your discretion and your priority must be realigned. We and the government will not reward bad priorities with additional funding. And I want to be absolutely clear, the PNM has no moral authority whatsoever to lecture any PNM candidates and PNM's friends and relatives billions of dollars in contracts that were spent with very little to show. So the taxpayers' money was spent, and the taxpayers were paying for waste and inefficiency under the PNM. That system of governance is being dismantled. We have dismantled the URP entirely. There are many investigations ongoing, and the police have already started interviewing persons, and we will hear more about that. While we cut out the criminals, we cut out the middleman, we cut out the PNM friend and financiers, we are using the money to provide meaningful employment to real people and better wages. So I tell you, when the PNM cries discrimination, the facts tell a totally different story. The figures are there on the Ministry of Finance website. All the big yellow books that every MP in Parliament gets, the figures are there. So they know they are lying. They either know or doing zero research and just coming out with a whole theatrics. So I want to tell you, let us remove the politics from the rubbish collection. Funding will be fair and transparent under this government. The hypocrisy of the PNM must be exposed. And I want to give citizens the assurance that we in the United National Congress will work to ensure that every municipality, whether it is under PNM or UNC, that the citizens will be serviced. And I also want to say, it's just one or two of those PNM mayors and chairmen that are causing their own problems. Several of the PNM chairmen whom I met with are fully cooperative. The mayors have met with us, they have shared plans, they have made requests, which we have given them additional workers, and they are focused on ensuring that their region is clean, that people in their region get employment, and so on. So I want to tell you, it's just a few noisemakers in the PNM who are making this totally false claim, and I just want to correct the record this morning. We will continue to work with NCC, the National Carnival Commission, with our Minister of Culture, Minister Michelle Benjamin, to ensure that all areas for national as well as regional carnival are serviced. I also want to commend the NCC for their work at Flavor Village. Flavor Village and the John Cupid Carnival Village has turned out to be such a success. And you know, after all those patrons who were at the opening, NCC has really been vindicated after they went there and they booed on the place and so on. And many of those people either don't understand change and many of them have political affiliation. But I can tell you, over 200,000 patrons, can't be wrong, in 3 weeks. And you know, the feedback from the vendors, there are over 80 vendors in that village. And some of them, many of them have been selling for carnival for many years. And their feedback from them is that one night of flavor has brought more sales to them than an entire carnival season in the past. This means volumes for local economic development, and that will be reciprocated in regional carnival in every part of Trinidad and in every region. And therefore, our municipal corporations have a role to play to facilitate the local economy being stimulated and people of the country enjoying carnival. So we support all our municipalities and we urge them to be fair with their spending, to be conservative and focus on what their job should be. And I also want to move, I know this morning we had a huge explosive headline in The Guardian. URP probe begins. The URP probe has caused an investigative journalist, his name is Joshua Simangal, to delve into the business of URP. I understand that they did acquire some documents through the Freedom of Information Act. This is not UNC information. This is information that is in URP, and any independent source, if they see those documents, they will realize that it is very clear that large sums of money would have gone to PNM general election candidates, other PNM officials, criminal elements, and a number of questionable payments. You also have where they have printed the names of companies who received over $15 million in payments. Again, former PNM candidates. And I want to tell you something. I am observing a trend where those wrongdoers who were appointed by the PNM in the URP continue to try to blame the UNC for their wrongdoing in the past 10 years. You should be apologizing to the public, apologizing to the taxpayers for your abuse of taxpayers' funds. And I want to tell you that our internal audits continue. The police investigation will very likely widen when they look at the documents that are available, and those who were involved in wrongdoing, they will face justice. But more than that, in addition to scrapping the corrupt URP program, the UNC has established the unemployment fund in the Ministry of Finance, and that fund has been accessed to do our public spaces, upkeep of public spaces program, our carnival cleaning, and that fund is being accessed to provide employment, meaningful employment to real people. So we are cutting the corruption, and by that we will make money available, and more persons will continue to be employed. So while we clean up, we are continuing to do our programs to upkeep public spaces, to provide sanitation, to provide value for money. Our workers are being encouraged to provide value for money because you are being paid a decent wage. You are going out there, and we want to ensure that our citizens have good service. So we in the United National Congress, we stand firm in terms of accountability, cutting out the corruption, and ensuring that our citizens have better service. So I thank you this morning for allowing us to share.
Thank you, Minister Ameen. That was very important information. You threw a big bucket of cold water on PNM propaganda. The PNM gravy train is over and citizens are winning. So right now I'd like to open the floor to the media to ask questions to our ministers here. And I will invite the ministers to come when the questions are posed. So if you could say your name and your media house, please.
Hi, good morning. I am Peter Christopher from Guardian Media. I just have a few questions for Finance Minister Tancoo.
Sure.
Sure, thank you.
Of course, Minister Tancoo, during your presentation, you did make reference to the fact that previous borrowing by the previous administration was not properly addressed. You have gone and refinanced this bond to a historic level. What are some of the strategies that you will have in place to make sure that those mistakes that you have highlighted will not be repeated?
Thank you very much for your question, sir. Good question. You indicated that we refinanced to historic levels. This is not historic levels. The fact is that in 2016, former Minister of Finance, Colin Booth, achieved his own historic level when we went to the US markets and England for that road trip and raised that $1 billion. Our raising of the bond, our successful raising of the bond over the last few days was as a direct result of us having to finance the loan that was taken out then, the bond that was taken out then. I indicated in my presentation several initiatives. I indicated two things. One, that the PNM administration failed to put anything in place to generate foreign exchange, to generate revenue streams that could have been used to fulfill the bond, to pay off the bond when we had gotten to it in 2026. I also indicated several initiatives that we have taken to increase revenue streams, including to close the $10 billion tax cap that Booth himself recognized, accepted, stated, specified, and did nothing about. Some of those new revenue measures would have been already stated and are in the public domain. The revitalization blueprint is one of them that have been getting a lot of media attention and a lot of attention from investors across the world. And there are several other initiatives soon to come. We expect to get additional revenue streams from the energy sector in particular, which is already trending upwards through the establishment of arrangements that we've had with EOG, Exxon, BP and others in the development of Shell, Manatee, and other fields. That's it. We have been putting in place measures for that exact purpose, to meet our financial obligations now and in the future. And we expect that those revenue streams, those foreign exchange generation options would be generating sufficient foreign exchange so that when the bond becomes due in fiscal 2036, that the country will be in an appropriate, comfortable place to meet its financial obligations to repay the bond rather than refinancing. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, I have a follow-up question. As you mentioned, of course, the energy sector is supposed to be on the uptick towards the later end of this year. But earlier this week, the NGC would have made some announcements with regard to the manufacturing sector in terms of the adjustment of the natural gas price, and the TTMA has expressed concern that this would lead to increased costs for their production. And potentially, are you concerned that that could impact our exports from Trinidad and Tobago?
I think the NGC has made it very clear that what they're trying to do is get to a more comfortable, realistic natural gas price that would benefit Trinidad and Tobago and manufacturers. I expect that there have been quite a bit of discussions between TTMA and manufacturers generally and the NGC. I'm not overly concerned about the competitiveness of our product abroad. I think our TTMA manufacturers are astute enough to appreciate that NGC has to live, NGC has to generate enough revenues to get close to covering costs, and that even at the revised prices offered by NGC to the TTMA, there's a substantial level of subsidy on the part of Trinidad and Tobagonians.
But are you
industrial sectors as well. What we are trying to do now is create a more realistic price range. There will be some objection, there will be some concern. We are in fact increasing the cost of an input, but I want you to bear in mind that that increase is specifically based on bringing it up closer to the price being faced by industrial customers and closer to the price of making the natural gas. The price of natural gas extraction generally is higher than the subsidized cost that TTMA was receiving. I think even at the increased prices, TTMA will still be in a better position than any natural gas user in any other part of the Caribbean in terms of the cost of natural gas.
So at this point, the consumers who are already facing higher prices, what comfort can you give to them that these costs will not be passed on to them?
That, I think, is a conversation that TTMA has to have with its consumers. I think that there's a challenge now for businesses, including the TTMA, to look a little bit closer at their operational abilities, to look a little bit more effectively at their efficiencies, and to streamline them to ensure that prices to customers do not increase.
I'm looking forward. I believe this week the CAF has a Latin American Caribbean Economic Forum, and you, as chairman, would play some part in it. Are you looking forward to that event, and are there any negotiations that you plan to undertake at that event?
I am actually looking forward to that engagement. As chairman of CAF, there's a lot that is expected of CAF in regional development. There are some conversations going on. There have always been some conversations. Trinidad and Tobago has had a good relationship with CAF. One of the issues that we are looking at to get some technical assistance from CAF with, and we are in advanced stages of that conversation, is assistance to look at the Exim Bank of Trinidad and Tobago for the purpose of streamlining and improving their efficiencies. So we expect to get that technical assistance in fiscal 2026 going forward. And there are a couple of other initiatives like that. We have had exceptionally good relations with CAF in terms of technical assistance in the development of our country.
Hi, good morning, Minister. Alicia Boucher from TV6 News here. Now, I must admit, the area of bonds and so on, those are not my forte, but I would like to ask, and you could, feel free to clear the record. And how many investors, if you know, would have participated in this particular bond offering?
I think I cited the figure. It was about 133 investors who would have put in a request for purchasing the various parts of the bond. I believe it was 133. 144. 144 unique investors. Thank you.
Now, there would have been speculations in the public domain as to the direction that the government would have gone pertaining to the variance between expenditure and revenue. And now that, some speculations would have been that the government would have approached the International Monetary Fund for borrowing and so on. And then we would have seen subsidies being reduced, like on liquefied natural gas, and that narrative was, put among by some as to whether or not these are some IMF measures. So now that you have completely, you have successfully completed this roadshow, would you like to address those who may have thought or think that the government would be approaching the IMF?
Absolutely. This government has not approached the IMF for any structural adjustment mechanisms. The IMF is due in Trinidad and Tobago, I believe, next week. But that's part of their normal article for consultation, in which they look at the economy, look at the initiatives of the government, and make an assessment of how things are going. This government is not taking advice from the IMF. We don't need it. As a matter of fact, what we do is we take guidance of the issues and concerns that they would have raised generally. I think that, though, we must accept that Trinidad and Tobago is a country in transition. We are moving away from the downward slippery slope that we have experienced over the decade of decadence by the PNM into a more stabilized period and an aspiration towards growth in 2026 and 2027 going forward. But when you have the former PNM leader, and you have the former PNM leader, and then you have the former and resurrected PNM leader, and PNM trolls on social media, all saying the same thing, it's easy for the population, I think, to be misled. This government has a manifesto. Our manifesto, provided to the national population, became the government's policy in May 2025. That policy is what guides our decisions. As you would have realized, even from the rating agencies, which gave us a negative outlook, we are not overburdened by the views of these agencies. We are not overly concerned about them. They have raised some issues. I have said in public domain before that we believe that some of the agencies were a bit presumptuous. They should have given us the opportunity to present our case and to show the direction that we were going in. But despite the allegations, innuendos, and suggestions by members of the PNM, the country is moving forward. And international investors at this $1 billion US bond raising showed what the rest of the world is seeing, that Trinidad and Tobago is a sound, solid country under Kamala Prasad Bissessa and the policies of this UNC administration to invest their money.
And just for you to clear this up as well, there are no plans to devalue the currency.
There has been another narrative. In fact, the former, I think he's still former Minister of Finance, Brian Manning, has on every occasion in the Parliament trumpeted that this country is going to devalue its currency. Just like the PNL had previously trumpeted that there's going to be war and there was going to be chaos and bombing in the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. None of that have materialized. I know that the media and that the listening population knows better than to take advice or information from any unsolicited, uninformed news source, unethical and inappropriate conduct, and to get the news from where it is generated here. There has been no devaluation, and the fear-mongering of the PNM, I almost said race-baiting, but that's a factor too. The fear-mongering and the race-baiting of the PNM is a desperate attempt to cover up their misdeeds, as today's front-page Guardian has started to pronounce on, and more will come. The bleatings of the PNM are desperate attempts to cover up their misconduct.
Now, I just want to digress a little bit. We know that the NUGFW is set to meet with the Chief Personnel Officer on Monday. The CPO would have indicated that, well, you would have given the green light for that negotiations to go ahead. The NUGFW has stated that it is expecting a 10% for the 2 negotiating periods. I would like to find out from your end, what would that cost the country if negotiations are settled at that point, and whether that has been catered for?
I think you'll forgive me for not speculating widely about many things. It's a negotiation between the NUGFW and the CPO. After that negotiation is finished, then we'll be able to be in a better position to specify the numbers involved. I wouldn't want to guess the outcome of the negotiations at this point.
And Minister, would you also like to comment on the laying of the CLICO Commission of Inquiry report into Parliament? We know that there are still many policyholders who are in a disadvantaged position. We did hear the government say that, it would like to kind of settle that high level of litigation at the courts and so on. And what are the plans for that?
I think that too is a work in progress. I look forward to more of it coming to fruition. I look forward for the members of the media to focus a little bit more on the contents of that Coleman report, because what it does is it shows some substantial transgressions committed by persons in the public domain that we all know. The resolution of the CLICO matter, that remains a work in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse Joseph, Penpoint Solutions Limited. Minister, is it true that the demonetization of the 5-cent coin is coming? And how soon, and what's the process of that?
I think that, again, you have solicited your information from an inappropriate news source. There has been no decision at this point with regards to a 5-cent demonetization. That's it. There has been no decision at this point with regards to a 5-cent demonetization.
Good morning, with Silat Prasad, 91.1 FM, Talk City. With respect to the devaluation, issues of devaluation, would the government continue to subsidize the current foreign exchange as it is, as in terms of managing it at the current rate rather than floating it at the market rate?
So that I think you know better. The foreign exchange management falls under the hand of the central bank, does not fall under the hand of the government.
Right. Okay. You had mentioned in 2016 there were 93 unique investors in the bond that was floated back then by the previous administration, and 144 unique subscribers to this latest issue. Are there any subscribers who participated in the 2016 issue who have opted to roll over their investments in the new issue? And if so, what percentage of the present issue are rollover investments?
I don't have that number at hand, but yes, I'm very sure that there would have been investors who have been satisfied in the direction that the country is going in and feel satisfied enough to roll over their investment.
Right. So how will the rollover investment be utilized? Because you wouldn't have to pay that in terms of a commitment as it is in August. Will it be used to augment U.S. Forex reserves, or for revenue generating reinvestment, or perhaps for capital expenditure projects? Have you all given any consideration?
We have not, but you are suggesting that the rollover will go where?
Well, the rollover investment, it means that you won't have to pay all those. It will roll over into, so it remains more or less.
Right, so it will roll over into the current
Yes.
allocation.
So how will that be
and
utilized?
Where are we going to get the extra money from if that happens? You see, the bond, I just want to make it a little bit clearer.
Yeah.
The bond that was raised, the $1 billion bond that was raised, was to refinance a $1
Yes.
billion bond. So if there's rollover, it simply means that persons and investors will be taking over, moving their investment by, for ease of reference, cashing in the bond here and buying the bond here. So it's simply just rolling over. It does not mean that there's going to be a net revenue generation.
No, we understand that, yeah, but in terms of you'll have access at least to that the money's your reinvestment. So how exactly will the mechanism work in terms of the whatever remains in that reinvestment portfolio?
All right. Well, I think that there's potential for some adjustments. I think that there's potential for some adjustments if persons come in earlier. But that means we must finance that earlier transactions. But because this is a refinancing, which means that $1 billion from 2016 to 2026, that $1 billion is matched by this $1 billion. I don't expect substantial differences to come up based on the take-up. But if they do, it will be rolled into the annual budget. It is part of the consideration for expenditure into the consolidated fund.
Yeah. Now, as you mentioned, the subsidization of natural gas. Now, in terms of the extraction costs, just to explain so that we'll have a better understanding. I mean, obviously, NGC is a middleman. Upstream produce, go to NGC, they resell, they make a profit. How could NGC continue to make profit if the gas was being subsidized to downstreamers, TTMA clients, and so on?
Well, you're making my point, but I don't think that the issue is about NGC making and generating a profit. I think the issue was about raising the price of natural gas closer to what is being paid by others, what is being paid by importers of natural gas abroad, what we're selling natural gas across the world for, but also to make it a little bit more realistic in terms of the overall cost. But I think you're asking the wrong minister. The Minister of Energy is in the best position to answer those specific questions, as well as the chairman of the NGC.
Well, in terms of the price at which the oil and gas would have been predicated on, while we know our production has been declining, well, I mean, in gas, it has a marginal increase now, but the price, if correct me if I'm wrong, was $72 and $72.5. Right, 25, yeah, for oil and 4.25 for gas.
Correct.
Oil has been trading substantially lower in the 50s and 60s. Gas price was trading lower. It has recently, over the last few days, really gone above. Would there be any mid-year review, any attempt to perhaps revise the figures, predicated figures?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Again, a very intelligent question. This is not the PNM. We have had an open, transparent policy of providing information to the population as and when required. The readjustment of the expectations for revenue will be part of the mid-year review when it becomes due. So yes, we will do a mid-year review, which is basically exactly that. It's a review of the budgetary plans, it's a review of the expenditure, and it's a review, of course, of the revenue streams. So you can expect that to come in the mid-year review.
I have one more question for you, Minister Tancoo. Well, a two-part question, actually. You spoke about the large tax gaps and so on, and you would have said what your government has begun doing in terms of the landlord taxation and so on. But it may sound like a drop in the bucket, if you want to put it that way, for a $10 billion tax gap, I think you said it was. So I wanted to find out whether there were any plans to, improve or to close that gap against the backdrop that the UNC administration, when it was in opposition, did go against things like property tax.
The tax gap is money that is due to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. That tax evaders, tax avoiders, and corruption is robbing the country off. So it's not revenue versus expenditure. It's not property tax. It's not taxation measures will not cut the tax gap. When I reference the tax gap that the PNM allowed to flourish, and to benefit some of their financiers, because that's the only reason you will see a tax gap, acknowledge that it exists, and do nothing about it. That $10 billion tax gap that Imbert referred to multiple years ago and Faris referred to in 2020 and before, that $10 billion tax gap is money that people simply have chosen to duck and hide, and businesses have chosen to duck and hide. And the government, the PNM administration of the time, by sacrificing the Board of Inland Revenue, the Inland Revenue Division, by compromising their ability, by refusing to upgrade their IT systems and their network, by undermining and understaffing the entity, the PNM administration facilitated that $10 billion tax gap. The way I said that we would treat with that was immediately tax administration reform. We will improve the tax compliance units. We will equip them with the resources. We will provide the Gen Tax $1 billion gap. And that's something I think members of the population need to pay attention to. Colin Burt swore on an affidavit that there was about a $10 billion gap. He must knew how he came up with that. And if you know that there's this money missing that you did not collect, and you make no attempts to collect it, but worse than that, you sabotage the agencies that were designed to collect that, that is willful negligence bordering on criminal negligence by a government, the PNM government, and by a Minister of Finance, by the junior Minister of Finance, and by the subsequent Minister of Finance. You see this Minister of Finance? You see this government led by Kamala Prasad-Bissessar? We're not taking that so. So the administration changes that I spoke about, the increasing of the staff, the improvement of the IT, those measures are what are designed to treat with the tax gap. The new revenue-raising measures are to add to revenue streams above and beyond. So these are measures that were not included before. But the tax gap, that $10 billion that we have lost over the last 10 years, that's $100 billion. As one of my friends says, $100 billion. That $100 billion was given away by the PNM. The question is to whom? Who collected $100 billion? Because this is not money nebulous. This is revenue generated by some persons and entities that they simply refuse to pay the tax that was due. They robbed by fraud, by omission, and by evasion Trinidad and Tobago for $100 billion. And the Minister of Finance then, and the Ministers of Finance then were complicit in this action.
Okay, quickly, if you'll be able to tell me what level are we at now in terms of the Gen Tax software?
We are currently, Trinidad and Tobago is operating under, I think I said it was level 8. Gen Tax software version 9. Version 9. The rest of the world has gone, I think, to 23.
Where are we at now since you're upgrading?
We are upgrading. The entire systems need to be changed. The entire software needs to be changed, and the hardware needs to be changed. Okay. The servers need to be changed.
So we're still at level 9.
We are in progress of moving upwards. But as you would imagine, level 8 was functioning under dilapidated, outdated infrastructure. We are now in the process of implementing new infrastructure, which will allow us to upgrade.
Okay. And I have a question here from a colleague. He wants to find out, from Rashad, he wants to find out how much of the 10 billion tax gap is the government expecting to be able to close in order to pay back the bond?
To pay what?
The bond.
No, the tax gap, I think people are misunderstanding what the tax gap is. The tax gap is you have earned money and you just decide to hide it and not pay taxes on it. We know that you generated a revenue and you have not paid revenue, you have not paid that income. So landlords, for example, who would have been generating a revenue for all these decades, they have not paid income tax. If there were some of those who would have not paid corporation tax, etc., that would be part of the revenue streams.
These larger energy companies and so on. But I guess maybe that should be asked to the energy minister, but I'll still. Your thoughts are?
All right, so there is something called transfer pricing legislation. Transfer pricing legislation is where you have large companies, including energy sector companies, that legislation is due to come to the parliament very soon. The Prime Minister has listed it as part of the parliamentary agenda for the Trinidad and Tobago's Parliament.
Can I just ask one quick question to Minister Ameen? One quick question to Minister Ameen.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
From the job fair.
Yes.
So the National Employment Recruitment Drive, the National Recruitment Drive really recruited people across a different spectrum in terms of qualifications and so on. So there are numerous positions within the ministries, within the municipalities, as well as Rural Development Company that falls under Ministry of Local Government that would have been advertised there. So several of those positions have been filled. Some of them we are still doing interviews. So it's not limited to laborers. What I can tell you is that these are pilot projects. So when we do the expanded program, we will also be doing it with the National Recruitment Drive. Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government is working with the Ministry of Public Administration and AI so that Minister Dominic Smith will ensure that all our data is uploaded there. What we have observed over time is a lack of transparency in the hiring practices at municipal corporations. A lot of people want a corporation job, and while the public can sign a book to apply for a job, you still have friends and family being selected from those books. So members of the public have made it very clear to different members of this government that they want to have an equal opportunity. And so we have taken that into consideration when we are redesigning the application process. And of course, we must do it in conjunction with the unions as well as the administration at the municipalities. So we will be making it easier, and we will also be even making it easier for small and micro contractors to be considered for some of the jobs that we do at Rural Development and Local Government. Again, it will be advertised. So we are working with Minister Smith to design and send all the data, but they will design what has to be advertised. We have also been asked to do small training sessions with small and micro entrepreneurs, small and micro contractors, so that they will have an equal opportunity to get jobs that fall within their scope. And some of them, they need guidance in terms of uploading documents, providing the regulatory documents and so on for their company. So that type of support, we are working on doing a session like that, a workshop with them. So we are targeting getting, as I say, down to the smallest person rather than working through big companies, and most of the money goes to them rather than to the laborer and the skilled worker and the everyday person. Yeah?
And as it pertains to the 1,000 persons, it would have sounded, at least to me, that it would just be for that carnival period.
Yes.
I know that one of the issues or one of the concerns in the country would be consistent employment. Can you comment on that as it pertains to at least after the carnival period
Yes.
is passed? Where are those 1,000 people?
So we are in the pilot phase. In the first pilot, we started on the 15th of December, and that is a 3-month pilot program where we have 220 employees under the National Program for the Upkeep of Public Spaces, and we have teams assigned in every municipality. During this pilot, we have been working with them to get feedback into how we could improve when we do the expanded program after the pilot finishes in March. What we're doing here is for the carnival is adding to the pilot where we're doing 1 month only for carnival. And again, this is from the 1st of February to the 28th of February, where these persons will be supervisors and laborers. And I indicated the wages that they will get. It's far more substantial than what was paid to URP and CPEP workers. And they will be assigned to the regional corporation to do the work for that 1 month period. What that allows us to do is to demonstrate the importance of managing your workers. Prime Minister in her statement pointed out that there are over 13,000 employees across all 14 municipalities. And people complain that corporation workers work for an hour and go home. In fact, I had a senior person from the corporation say that workers come to work for 6:30 and leave at 6. So it speaks to the impression of what people see as their productivity. You're very lucky to see people after 8 and 9 p.m. People are signing the attendance book and leaving, not performing work. And then you have other employees in the public service and in the private sector working for sometimes less money and staying for longer hours. And the productivity is what we are concerned about. Of course, the unions have called me to say, listen, we can't work more than these hours because we don't have bathroom facilities on the road. And the truth is that during the hours that they do work, we could get more productivity. And in my discussions with the union, they have agreed with the Prime Minister's sentiment. So while they indicated they will work with their members to increase productivity, I can tell you that our pilot programs have seen significantly more in terms of the progress report. We are seeing far more productivity from the workers who are there. While we have dealt with the issue of the wage, moving them from the bare minimum to having a substantial, decent wage, what we have to work on now is job security. They have been taking place. This is fraud. And there are people out there who want real jobs. So the culture of ghost workers and the culture of the criminal element, there are people out there who want real jobs. So the culture of ghost workers and the culture of the criminal element infiltrating and intimidating, the culture of political patronism, where people are putting their friends and family to work and they feel because they're related to somebody, they don't have to cut grass or do work. That has to come to an end. There are people out there who want those jobs. And the Prime Minister is right. And this issue of productivity has plagued the regional corporations for some time. And I'm committed to working with them to improve the productivity together with their representative unions.
On a point of clarity, Minister, of course, this is related to that similar topic. You mentioned, of course, that the application, the ministry is now where they would apply for the jobs and they're no longer going through contractors. So what is the mechanism in place to evaluate these applications and what resources have been put towards that?
So far, because the pilot, we have such a small number, we employed people who are from the region so that we didn't go countrywide to advertise. So I'll tell you, it's difficult to take in one region, one regional corporation. If you look at Tunapuna Piako as an example, if you take people from throughout Tunapuna Piako region and then you have to send them to some areas like Heights of Aripo or Blanchishes or Maracas Valley, some of those further out areas, even on the southern side of the constituency like Kelly Village and Monroe Road and so on, it's impractical. So while in this program, we have relied on recommendations from our councillors and our MPs when this is only for the pilot. When we open the program, we will advertise publicly. And as far as possible, we will try to place people closer to their place of residence so that you will also have community pride, where they will be cleaning up an area that impacts them directly. So we are working on that aspect with the Minister of Public Administration and AI, who is also responsible for the National Recruitment Drive advertising, Minister Jolene John. In fact, an interministerial team has been assigned to work with all ministers concerning recruitment and advertising. And that includes Minister Jolene John, who managed a fantastic initiation, the launch at National Cycle Center, which also went to different parts of the country to do that recruitment drive where over 100,000 persons applied. And so we will work with them. Minister of Labour is also on that committee to get their recommendations as to the best fit, because local government is not just about jobs where people have resumes and qualifications. You have people who do menial work, or what they call menial work, but where we have outlying communities that we want to be serviced, and where we have people in those communities who want employment. So we must find a way to facilitate that, but in a very transparent manner. Yeah, so these are just the pilot projects that are ongoing now, and we have also been receptive to people making their input, stakeholders, not just the unions and the employers, but citizens also making their input into what method they think should be utilized in opening up the transparency across the board, whether it is recruitment or some other aspect of the program. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Minister Ameen and Minister Tancoo.
Is there one more question I can quickly ask Minister of Finance, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
One final question.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Minister, with respect to the 150 million US dollar settlement of the Proman's transaction, fraudulent transaction, according to the appeal court, purchase of 51% controlling shares from Clico Energy shares. Did you have any input into the settlement of that recent announcement of a settlement?
The short answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
I just have two questions. One with regard to the what is the status of the Fair Trade Commission Board, and of course the status of Caribbean Airlines in terms of the fixing up and cleaning up of the operations there, as there are rumors that there are some issues with regard to monies owed to suppliers for Caribbean Airlines as well.
All right, so I'm not aware of the issue with regards to monies owed to suppliers. I know that the work with regards to the rescue attempt on Cal is currently ongoing. Under the last regime, there was a lot of inappropriate conduct and a lot of mismanagement of resources that took place. Those matters are being resolved expeditiously as we speak. With regards to the Fair Trading Board, that matter is also soon to be before the Cabinet for resolution.
The long answer, if possible, while the short answer was no to the previous question, would you be at liberty to give a long answer?
So that I'll answer you again with a no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Tancoo, Minister Ameen. This was a very informative session, a marathon one. Thank you to the members of the media, and thank you to our viewers from around the world. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. This is Dr. Kirk Negu, PRO of the UNC, signing off.